Everton drew 1-1 with Lille in their final pre-season game at the Hill Dickinson. It was a last kick of the game equaliser for Lille, and for the most part, Everton looked pretty good in the game. There's a few things I want to talk about the pre-season as a whole, but there's no better place to start than in that Lille game, and just how young and exciting some of the players look for Everton. You know, particularly Harrison Armstrong, Tyreek George, and also Tyler Dibbling I want to talk about as well. We'll start with Harrison Armstrong. You know, overall his pre-seasons looked really, really promising. He looks as though he's really filled out, you know, physically, and he looks more capable of performing at a Premier League level. Obviously, it's a really physical league, and last year, you know, maybe in some instances he looked a little bit lightweight. But I think he's looked really, really good, really confident and assured on the ball. I was particularly impressed with him in that Newcastle game. A lot's been made of that performance that he put in, but you know, actually him playing in that number 10 role with Kieran Dewsbury Hall dropping into that 8, it opened up a lot of different opportunities for Everton. And you know, his runs in behind, and he just looked like an all-round solid player. He looks, as I say, comfortable with the ball at his feet. He always seems to be making the correct passings, and you know, he gives something Everton going forwards as well. He got 2 assists in that game, but I've been really, really impressed with him, and it looks as though David Moyes has put a lot of trust in him for the season that's going to come ahead. Tim Irigbunam looks to have picked up an injury in pre-season, so that opens the door for Armstrong to get more minutes, and that's definitely something that we can all be really excited for. As I say, been really, really, really impressed with him in pre-season, and obviously he's a player with a lot of potential, but it will be interesting to see whether he can you know, really stake a claim in that starting 11 throughout the season. So Harrison Armstrong is just one of these young players that Everton seem to be really investing a lot of time and money in. Obviously Tyler Dibbling came in at the start of last season and failed to really you know, apply himself in that Everton side last year. He looked completely bereft of confidence and, you know, an absolute shadow of the player we thought we were getting. But I will say in these last 2 or 3 games in the pre-season, he's looked completely different and new, and he looks like he's got a brand new lease of life in him, and that's really, really exciting. There's such a will from the Everton fans for Tyler Dibbling to succeed in Merseyside, and you know, I just feel like he didn't believe that in himself, and he seems to be such a confidence player. He's still only really young. He seems like a really quiet lad as well, so you know, that lack of confidence has had a massive impact on his performances. But something seems to have just switched. He had a brilliant game against Stuttgart in Germany. He didn't play so much in the Newcastle game, but again, against Lille, he made a really, really strong impact. He started the game and he looked really positive, taking on his fullback, and, you know, looked to have a decent end product as well. You know, he had a couple of shots as well, which we're not used to seeing. I think this could be a really, really promising season for Tyler Dibbling if he can keep building on this momentum. I don't know what's changed in the last few weeks for him to just suddenly, for it to just seemingly click for him in this side, but it's really, really promising, and I'm really excited, and I'm really happy for him as well. I think obviously having a few young English players in the squad with him, you know, you look at Hackney, Armstrong and Tyreek George, he'll be familiar with them as players and people as well, you know, in and around the youth teams with England. That will help him come out of his shell, and you know, you've got some experienced heads in there as well in the squad, and they just look to have all gelled really well together. Dibbling obviously moving up from the south coast will have taken him some time to adapt to just a new way of living and a new football club entirely. So, you know, maybe now that he's got that under control, he can start to kick on in a blue shirt, and that's something that's you know, definitely proved true in these last few games. Obviously touched on Tyreek George there as well. He's looked really, really, really promising on that left-hand side. He looks really confident. He's really direct. He's so quick. Great with the ball at his feet, and he looks like a really exciting player. Something that Everton have lacked in the last few years is pace in the wide areas, and he certainly gives us that, and he gives us a bit of creativity as well. A lot of questions over whether Jack Grealish would be making a return to Everton. I think from what we've seen in pre-season, it's not really necessary. George, Dibbling, now Brennan Johnson coming in as well. I think Grealish would maybe just stunt the growth of players such as Dibbling and George. But, I think we're starting to see that, the proof's in the pudding with Tyreek George. It was an absolute no-brainer for me to bring him in on a permanent deal. And that goal against Newcastle that we saw was a sign that, once he adds that finishing product to his game, then he'll be fantastic. I think that will only come about though with game time. He needs to play, and as he grows as a player, the end product will arrive. As I say, it usually takes a player 1 or 2 years in men's football, in first team football, to really sort of establish themselves and start putting up the numbers that you'd expect of an out-and-out Premier League winger. George definitely has the potential to get there, and I've been really, really excited by what I've seen from him so far in pre-season. So there's a lot of young, exciting talent in that Everton squad, and I think it's a good sign for us going forwards. So we've also had real good insight now into the way that Hayden Hackney is going to fit into this Everton side. Obviously came in from Middlesbrough, Championship Player of the Season. He had a little bit to prove, I feel, coming in at the start of this season. So it's been really interesting to see how he's just been slotted in to that number 6 position, and he's looked increasingly more and more comfortable on the ball. He's starting to really assert his game into the way Everton are playing. We're seeing him drop in between the centre backs. He's happy to pick up the ball from the defenders with his back to goal. On the half turn, looking to bring other players in, and he's quick into the challenge as well. Been really impressed with him. I don't think he's quite at the final product yet, but it's still early days, especially in terms of his Everton career. But I think it's been a really smart move to bring him in, and I'm personally really pleased that he's with us. I think he'll bring a lot of ability to just put the foot on the ball and bring other players into the box, into the game. And that's something that's Everton have been lacking a lot in recent years. Obviously, you look at Idrissa Gana Gueye and the way that he would assert himself on the game. He's quick into the challenge, but he was often left found wanting when it comes to, making those progressive passes through the pitch. And Hackney definitely has the ability to do that. So I think maybe we're going to see a slightly different Everton side this year, one that's going to knock the ball around a little bit more and just be more comfortable with the ball at their feet. And that will come from Hayden Hackney. So it will be interesting to see just how much he can really assert his personality onto this team. And I think he's still young. He's not quite as young as the other lads we've been talking about, but he's going to have a real bright future here at Everton, and certainly as time progresses, he'll get more and more comfortable, more and more used to the players around him. And from what I've seen and from what I've heard, he seems to be really happy. And I think the Everton squad as a whole is in a good place right now mentally. I think they knew that last season they just fell at the final hurdle, and maybe with these new signings they're thinking, okay, we can go again, and we can maybe make that push into Europe, which the club desperately needs now that they've had that first season in the new stadium. It's really time to kick on now as a football club, and players like Hayden Hackney can definitely be at the forefront of that. And obviously I'm saying there how good this Everton squad looks, but there are still obviously some concerns that we still harbour from, I say last season, but probably seasons previous to that. The obvious one is the right back situation has still not been addressed. There's been links with countless players over the summer, but nothing's really come to fruition. None of those options have really excited me either, I'll be honest. From what we've seen, it's been we just need a specialist right back, and anyone who's available seems to have been linked with us. But I don't think really from the calibre of player that we seem to be attracting that David Moyes is really too keen on it. Obviously, we've seen Merlin Roll step into that right-back role in the last few pre-season games. Just as a side note, I think he's been really impressive, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he's going to develop throughout the season. But in terms of him being a right-back, he's looked steady, but he's not a right-back. So maybe it's just going to be another season of putting in square peg in a round hole, which, to be honest, is pretty negligible from Everton's recruitment perspective. They cannot go into a new season with Nathan Patterson being the only specialist right back in the squad. So that's the obvious one. We won't go on about that too much because it seems to be, the only thing that everyone's talking about. But my other issue comes in the way of the defence. When Jared Branthwaite's playing, we look like an entirely different team. He's so important to the way that Everton play now. And when he's not in that squad, as much as I, love and respect Michael Keane for all the years and work that he's put in for Everton, he's just not at that level. And I'm not suggesting Everton need to bring someone in who's going to play on the same level as Jared Branthwaite. But the question, with that injury record in the past, can we rely on him to play the full 38 games in a season? I certainly hope so, because I think we're a fantastic team with him in, and we look so assured at the back. But when he's not there, there are a lot of questions that get asked of that back four. Tarkowski and Keane together, their experience, and they understand the game really well, and they're good in the air, but so slow, and they really get exposed, and have done in pre-season, and also we saw for the most part of last season. It was we just conceded too many goals. Obviously, another area is the left back. Mikolenko obviously signed a new contract at the start of the year, and Adam Asnou has made a few promising appearances off the bench, and a couple of starts as well in this pre-season. Obviously, we know what Mikolenko can do. We know what he can't do. Adam Asnou seems to be, quite a positive presence down that left-hand side. As he plays more and more football, which I'm hoping David Moyes will give him the opportunity to do so, he'll start learning the position more. Obviously, I think playing alongside Jared Branthwaite would be a massive help to any left back. So I'd definitely like to see Asnou play some more football this year. It's a similar case again. We talk about how young this Everton side is. I think now it's just about time that Everton, really start implementing these young players into the squad and start giving them some good minutes. And that will probably come about through, a good cup run as well, which something we're not used to seeing in the last few years. That can be a really valuable exercise for these young players to come in, play some, meaningful first team football, without it having such an impact on the league. Obviously, the clubs now in Europe, with their young players coming through, they can throw them into a group game, and they can perform, in front of a full stadium on the biggest, European stages. That's why I think it's a really valuable tool for Everton to secure European football moving forwards, so they can give these young players, a chance in the first team without too much really riding on it, especially in the earlier stages of any European Cup. But obviously that is in the future, hopefully in the future. As of right now, I'd like to see Everton actually give a real good go of the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup. It's about time we had a nice little cup run. So we look at the squad now, there's a lot more depth there. There's definitely more scope for rotation, and if the injuries do occur, then hopefully we're more prepared to deal with that as and when they happen. Mark Travers, I think, in goal is looked pretty solid as well for Everton. Obviously, Jordan Pickford's going to be the undisputed number one. There's no questions about that. But he's a really capable understudy, and there's been a lot of links for him to move away from the club, for more first team football. I think from what I've seen, he's definitely a keeper who's ready to step up into that role. It's just a shame that he's behind England's number one, Jordan Pickford, so he's not going to get much of a look in. But again, maybe in the cup runs that hopefully we can put together, he'll get a bit of an opportunity. And finally, before I ramble on and this video goes on too long, just touch on Tieno Barry. and his last few games in an Everton shirt. He's come out with a few quotes saying that his this season's all about revenge for him. He didn't really give the best account of himself last season, and he said that he's done a lot of talking. And to be honest, his performances have reflected a real change in mentality, attitude, physicality. He looks, to be playing with a lot more confidence as well. It's really strange to be saying this because Everton are usually rubbish in pre-season and we don't really learn anything about the squad at all. But I think there's been real signs of progression in the time off that the players have had. Barry looks, as I say, to be really throwing himself around. Last season there was questions over him being, a big figure, but actually way too lightweight in the Premier League. But in the games that we've seen, he looks to be really dynamic. He's getting his body in, and he's looking after the ball and bringing other players into the box as well. He's obviously scored a few goals, which is the most important thing for a striker. So it'll be interesting to see, whether he can have a sort of breakout season. In the end, he got 8 goals, I think it was, in the Premier League. So not an awful return for your first season. Especially coming into a new country and a completely new style of play. But it will be interesting to see now whether, as much like the other young players in that squad, he can kick on and really assert himself as the main man in this Everton side. But that's it for today. I think that's kind of just a good little roundup of some of the performances I've been really impressed with in pre-season, and just addressing some of the concerns that I'm sure many of you share as well with Everton going into the new season. But thank you for watching. Hopefully more content to come as the season kicks off. But thank you, and I'll see you then.